shit. First mistake right out of the gate. There we go. Get the mic over here for the live stream. And then hysterical. There's always got to be a mistake in life, or it just isn't worth it. I spent all the time getting the streams going that, I forgot to swing the mic around. That's kind of funny. Anyway, welcome to Spirit of 420. I am Spirit of 420 because everything I do is so 420. I hope that I already have some folks in there. Let's see. It looks like we do have somebody in there. So anyway, today is my 50th birthday, and it is my first live stream. Let's see how it started. Started deciding to do this, hell, probably 2 years ago. And then with the help of a couple of close friends, in particular, one friend in North Carolina, shout out to him. I decided to go ahead and start doing it, and I started it on April 20th at 420 because obviously, for Spirit of 420, it is what it is. And real quick, I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Man, I'm nervous. I won't lie. Or I should say, I will be frank about it. I can't stand that phrase. I won't lie, or I'll be honest. Regardless, moving on. So it started in April, and I knew I would start live streaming, and I've been announcing it, and so I've been getting ready for this. And it's really exciting. I cannot express to everybody out there who is listening and who is tuning in just how excited I am that I am 50. My life, for those of you who don't know, I mean, just to give you a few tidbits, I was a drug dealer for pretty much a solid 10 plus years, just a little over 10 years, not quite 11. Really started really started at 14, technically speaking, because the very first bag I ever got, I think I talked about that, the very first bag I ever got was an ounce so that I could get a quarter and smoke it. So technically it started at 14, and I ended up getting busted shortly after 26. So really it was more like 12 years, but I really was dealing for about 10 years out of that time. And I got to the point of being a drug lord status. So, for me to make it to 50 years old, quite frankly, is what feels like a miracle. I should have never even made it out of that lifestyle. Most people who go where I went and did the things I did, they don't make it back. So I feel very grateful for that. And on top of that, I was just talking to my boss, funny enough, and I'll just say this. I don't think she knows I'm doing this, and that's fine. But I will give her a shout out in the sense that we share the same exact birthday. So we ended up talking today, as we do, and she's been my boss now for 4 years. And I think that's a good sign when you find out that your boss and the founder of the company actually shares the same birthday with you. But regardless, we were talking about how when you're young, and I talked about this in the last episode, but I'll just touch on it again. When you're young, your happiness is dependent upon what your parents provide you in the life that you have. And really many times you're still very stressed. You're learning. It's a new experience. Everything is new. I mean, even all the way up until you turn 18, right? Because when you're 18, everything is provided. Even if you've gotten a job at 16, 14, like I did, you still have a lot of things that provided for you. And you don't have the full responsibilities of life until you do actually move out, right? So then there's more change, and change is constant. It's consistent and consistent, literally. So, when I think about, you know what? Hold on. Let me just say this real quick. Thank you. It is my birthday, and people are giving me a shout out on there. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. But again, back to what I was saying about life. It is constant and consistent, the change. So I have found, and this it's obviously not just me, but having the understanding of life and where I've come to and where I am now, it gives me a different happiness than I've ever had. I mean, I know I don't sit around and smile, and I keep telling myself to do more of that smiling. Being happy doesn't mean you have to smile. I mean, I joke all day. I try not to worry most of the time. When things go wrong, I mean, I've had bad days since I've started doing this, and I've still maintained recording every day and doing what I said I was going to do every day, because when it goes wrong, you realize very quickly, or at least at some point in life, hopefully you realize, and if you're tuning in, maybe you're going to learn from my experiences, because I talk about it all the fucking time. But it is a balance. If you're having a bad day, it's inevitable you're going to have a great day. It's the only way that this world exists, and in talking about that balance happens in all situations. When you're younger, you're provided, you have no responsibility, so you have one type of happiness. When you get to be my age and you understand what I was just talking about, and you truly see the balance of life and all that, the happiness really starts to grow. And I am getting happier every day. And I wasn't happy for the first 46 years, people. So, it wasn't happiness. It was struggling. And always, I was one of those, and I had the attitude many, many times that, why is life out to get me? Why? Blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until my wife was hit by a car, and you can go back to my YouTube channel and watch that episode. It's tweeted. So if you go and look at my tweets, you'll find it. But the fact is, when my wife got hit by a car, a lot of people ask me, why do you have such what you feel is a great knowing instead of a belief? Because that's what I tell people. I know that God exists. And it all changed when my wife was hit. And I'm going to hold it together. It's my first stream, and I'm just feeling, extremely emotional. So I do apologize for if it's bothering anybody. But, when my wife got hit, the fact that she wasn't killed, number one, and the fact that I knew the moment she got hit, that's not in a world that's based on random chance, okay? And I've experienced other things in the netherworld, but let's just talking about that example so I don't digress. And hey, yeah, let me have some smoke. By the way, this is my first live stream. So, if you've watched my show, I've got my 70s filter in there with the lines coming down, which I love because I was born in 72. Excuse me. You also have my constant smoke that's on there, even though I am smoking, but the smoke is not here. That's an overlay. I'm going to have to get those things. But there you go. There's some smoke. Back to when my wife got hit and how that brought me closer to God. And in the shortest of terms, in the sweetest of it, and I am going to get to the story of my first arrest. That's a hysterical story. You'll love it. But I figured, a bit of it should be, a bit of this first stream should be introducing people to me and who the hell I am and why the hell am I doing this. And it really started, actually 46 is when we moved here. She got hit in 2016. So this really started when I was 44. And I didn't, it took me, we lost everything. So there was a time where I was not happy. And even though that was the proof of God that night, or I should say a big proof of God. And then shortly there, a few nights later, we ended up having just, epiphany after epiphany of what we literally equated to like miracles, because it just was amazing how everything was lining up. And that's another thing. When things start to line up because you give yourself to God, you kind of know, hey, there is a plan. And I'll just take this moment. Everybody is special. Everybody is here for a purpose. There is such a thing as 6 degrees of separation, which means everything you do has a trickle effect in this entire world. So keep that in mind. But it started at 44. And then when I was at 46, that's when we ended up leaving the Southeast and moved into the Rockies, where we dwell now. And that's when I really started to find true happiness. Not because I moved. I want to make that very clear, because I had moved my entire life. I was a nomad. In fact, I consistently moved to try to find happiness. I don't know if anybody else is out there is like that, but I rarely stayed in a home more than 2 years, maybe 3. And that was it. So I've actually been in this home now for, funny enough, here in just a few days. Today's the 19th. So here in just a few days, it will mark 4 years, which is the longest I've lived in a home. The current job is the longest I've ever held a job. I'm a salesman, so I go from job to job, and I make excuses as to why I go from the job to job most of the time. Not to say that some of those weren't valid, but regardless. So, back to giving yourself and that. When moving here, again, it wasn't the move. I was a nomad and really, and still probably at heart am. I'm itching to move only because I want something new. But it was the fact that when we moved here, it was the end of an ordeal, because we got the settlement for my wife getting hit. And that brought us here. That gave us the money. It also gave us the money and had the additional money to come here and do it, probably better than any move I'd ever made, where it was, on a shoestring budget and trying to make every penny. every penny count and then not having anything left over when you make the move. So we didn't do it that way, and I had plenty of time to get a good job, and that made a difference. But from day one, there was a lot of signs again, and I'll talk about this more and more as we grow together on the show. But I would see, and you would, the happier you become, and the more that you realize that there is an ultimate power, and the more you give into that plan, then the more it happens. And I talked about it in the last episode, so watch it. I call it my sandbox theory. But back to, seeing the signs and all that, from the time I moved out here, I just knew I was doing the right thing. Everything continued to line up the way it was. Yes, there were still hard times. I ended up getting this stupid dislocated thing. That's ridiculous. I got a knee injury. I have twins, and one of them, so two of their friends moved out and ended up having four, at one time, 18-year-olds living here, 18-year-old boys, along with my two younger boys, because I have four that are blood, and then I have another one that one of those two that moved out here has become kind of a fifth adopted one. But nonetheless, one of my sons, the younger by 3.5 hours of the twins, right after we got here, the four of them were out. The four 18-year-olds were out, and we had two brand new Kias that were, brand spanking new, and they were Kia Fortes. Nothing great, but they were brand new and were working in great condition. He told one, I trying to remember. I think they'd been here a week, maybe 10 days. They just got here from the Southeast. So you still go through hard times. But we made it through all those, and I kept seeing all these other signs. And again, the little things that lined up, the job that I ended up getting, I talked about that. When you talk about things lining up, I've never lied on a resume. And I'll just give you one example, because I know I want to get to the story, and there's other things I want to say. But never lied on a resume. And the one time I did lie, and the only lie I put on there, was that I had been working at the previous job for 6 years. Now, I will say this: I covered my ass, and I got the previous job because I was very good friends with them, and we would have had a great long relationship. But they knew I wanted to get the hell out of the Southeast. So back to what I was saying. I lied. I said I'd been working there for 6 years. I confirmed the lie with the old job. Then I ended up getting a job that I found out within, I kid you not, probably 45 days of getting that job. My hiring boss and I were talking, and he said his number one requirement, was that they had to have a minimum of 6 years of the last job. Come on, people. I mean, you can't, and I mean, it just continues to happen. One of the ways I test it is I think about something. I mean, if you have the ability, and this goes into, yes, assimilation theory, but if you have the ability to think about something and then it happens, it's not random, right? You're not forcing it. We all have it in us. We're all part of this world. We all touch this world. We all have the part of it. We all have that ability to create it a little bit, to put our spin on it. Just know that, whether you believe it or not, it's happening all the time. I already mentioned 6 degrees of separation. I'm sure most of you understand and have heard of butterfly effect. Well, I mean, the reason that the butterfly effect happens is because there's only 6 degrees of separation. So think about that for a minute. If every, man, woman, child, beast on the planet is only separated by 6 steps, well, then every move you make ends up having to do with something. Even if you think you're insignificant, you're not. Even if you think you're a shut-in, there's still somebody you deal with. I don't care whether you realize it or not. There's somebody you deal with. You have to get food. You have to exist. You cannot be a shut-in and not completely exist unless you're living as a hermit out in the woods, and then you're not watching my fucking show. So it doesn't matter. So I do want to take a little minute and just give a shout out. One of my favorite actors is, and I meant to do this on the show, but I wrote the outline for my first stream and forgot that it was going to be like, I wasn't thinking, I should say I was just stoned. I mean, that's probably the best bet, is that I was stoned, and didn't think about the fact that it was going to be like 2.5, 3 weeks later. So I do want to give a shout out to Bruce Willis and his, particularly him, but his family as well, and what they're enduring. It's really, it's heartbreaking to see people go through that. I watched Patrick Swayze back in the day. We didn't know it, but we were watching, obviously, Chadwick Bosnick. So, these things happen. I mean, we're all people. These actors aren't any different. I have a very different respect for actors than I did years ago, and I don't put them down, but I think we put too much, how do you say, importance on what any actor that's made it famous has to say, and we're seeing a lot of that lately. I won't even bother naming all the examples that prove that, right? My only point is who we are in here is what ultimately speaks loud, and I've always believed actions speak louder than words. Now, it's funny because actors are acting, but that is not their actions. Literally, you put somebody's entire repertoire, and I'll go to someone, Anthony Quinn. Anthony Quinn's a great example, and I think he's passed. So the late Anthony Quinn, that guy has a stupid repertoire of movies, right? Actually, Samuel L. Jackson is another one. I mean, we're talking 400 or 500 movies, right? But if you put every bit, and think about this, every bit of time and footage that they have actually spent in front of the camera together, it might end up equating a few days or a week, depending on the actor. Because even in a 2-hour movie, I'm not talking about, that's not 2 hours of that actor's face in front of you. It never is, right? Or any one particular actor. Some movies, obviously, and that got something at the door there. Probably my kids thinking that this is really cool. So my only point is an actor for even if it was a year, come on, we're still talking about for the common person, like 1/75th of their entire life. So, by the way, just a little side note before, because I gave the shout out to him, I kind of gave you a little touch on actors. We'll come back to that. I got plenty of time. My goal, just real quick, and I do want to come back to that. Oh, well, there it goes. It's flying away. And there it went. You get high and ideas go away. I will say this, my goal is to take Sundays off, not really necessarily in respect specifically of any one religion. It is, in my opinion, in respect of a day of rest and a day to spend with my family and a day to make sure that I absolutely thank God for being here. So with that being said, I will stream on odd days, as I have started on my birthday, which was an odd, and that is my favorite days. And I will record and post on even days. And I'm going to do this for the next 2 years at least and see where it goes. It has been overwhelming to watch the way that Twitter has grown. Because what's funny is when I started this, I wasn't even, okay. So I started again on the 20th of April. That was the first episode. But then I started engaging Twitter technically 2 weeks ago today. 2 weeks ago today. It was well after I posted, I think, 7 shows. And then I finally just had 2 followers, which was, I think, my probably, I don't even know. Anyway, the point being is that after just 2 weeks of engaging Twitter and just being part of the hashtag cannabis community, hashtag MMemberville, hashtag stoner fam, as well as hashtag 420life. I have the hashtags that I'm trying to start, and you see them. But regardless, just being a part of that community and engaging it, I've already got, probably by the end of the show, the way it's been growing, I might end up being right at 350. To give you an idea, it really, the more you spend on there and the more you engage people individually and just be kind, quite frankly, it multiplies. And, it's kind of like a snowball effect. And what I mean by that is Sunday, just 4 days ago, I had 50 followers. Now I'm about to hit 350 today. So, it wasn't, I think I hit 100 sometime on Monday. That's right. And then overnight, Monday, I ended up hitting, it was overnight Monday. I hit 200. And then overnight last night, I hit 300 in the sense of waking up today. And I had 313 when I woke up. So, and I'm having a blast. I want to pay nothing but respects to every single person on Twitter. I'm live on Twitter today. I'm live on Twitch today. I'm live on, probably don't know anybody on Twitch because I haven't engaged that yet, but I'm just figure I'll start broadcasting and maybe somebody will tune in. But back to what I was saying. Also live on YouTube, obviously. So started this and I'm going to do it for at least a couple of years and see where it goes and see if I can't put my thumbprint on the world a little bit bigger than what I have. Now that is, there is 6 degrees of separation and you have the butterfly effect, but obviously the bigger you flap your wings and the bigger butterfly that you make yourself become, then the bigger and larger effect you have on the entire world, and back to just to end it with the actors. That's my whole point is, they get this instant fame because they're in movies. As soon as they make it into a good film or a big film, they're instantly famous. It doesn't mean that they're instantly good people and have instantly great values and great opinions. And we've learned that, I think, really hardcore over the last 6 years with some real slaps in the face, no pun intended, over just the last few months. So moving on. Hopefully the reason why most of you tuned in was to hear the story of my first arrest as an adult. I say that because I was arrested as a child. And that was fun. That'll be another episode or a stream. We'll see. But scratch that one and move forward. I'm 19 years old. I will tell you this. I am in Tennessee at the time. That was where my father was living, and I was staying with him. And I will give a little preface. Keep this one little tidbit in mind. My father's side of the family is extremely conservative. My mother's side of the family is extremely liberal. Two different worlds. My mother came from a dairy farm with a lot of cows and a lot of other livestock as well in Kentucky, whereas my father, most of his life was up north, but very conservatively raised because his father was a captain in the Navy. My grandfather actually was a survivor of Pearl Harbor. He was on the USS California when it was sunk at Pearl Harbor, and one of the very few survivors of that, and then went on to become a captain. Regardless, there's some more breadcrumbs. Back to what I was saying. Oh, and I think did I lose it? Somebody want to text me and tell me what I said? Well, that would be fun, but I guess I'll have to just come back to it. The arrest. My grandparents were in town. That's the whole point. They're extremely conservative, my grandparents, and they had just gotten into town. So when I got into trouble was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'll backtrack, but I'm just giving you an idea. They got into town at like maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock that night. Saw him, hugged him. I think we had a little bit of dinner, and then I took off and said, I'll see you guys in the morning. So I'm 19 years old. I've got a car, I've got friends, and it is a Friday night. And I was ready to party, and I was ready to have a good time. And back then I was pretty much willing. I was dealing drugs, so I was pretty much willing to do and try just about anything out there. And at the time we had some white blotter LSD, and I took a couple of tabs at about 12:30. Okay. Now at the time I said I was driving, I had a 1984 yellow Nissan Sentra, and my brilliant young ass was running around with some bad brakes, as well as I had 4 people in the car. There was 3 in the back. This is a 4-door Sentra, so I mean it is technically made for that, but you're talking about a very small foreign car. And the brakes are going bad on it, and the tires are also, they're not full of tread. If the brakes are going bad, you can't imagine that I've got great tires on there, right? So there was a part of town where we lived, and this is in Tennessee, in the what is that? East Tennessee, in the Tri-City area. That'll give you the idea. Bristol, Kingsport, Johnson City area. Regardless, so there's a lot of old roads there that are concrete, and what I mean by that is they're literally not asphalt. They're like big concrete slabs that they pour, and that shit gets slick, man. I don't know if anybody understands how slick that gets, but here we are. I've dropped acid at it might have been even like 12:15, maybe 12:20, but I wasn't feeling it yet. That's a fact, okay? Because we're traveling and it starts to rain, and it's extremely slick already on these concrete slabs. So you can imagine, add rain, add bad tires, add bad brakes, right? 5 people in a Nissan Sentra. And this is At the time, it was 1991. Well, needless to say, as I'm going down this hill, I tried. I kept, I'm not stupid in the sense that I don't know the rules of driving. I had my license, so I pumped the brakes, but every time I pumped them, it just slid. So I ended up, there was no choice but to physically slide the car through this stop sign at the bottom of the hill. And as I was beeping my horn and flashing my lights, well, the beeping and the horn and the flashing lights I thought was smart because, at least that way, if anybody sees me coming, they can see that I'm having issue. I didn't really think about turning the hazards on. This was all happening so fast, but I was trying to, I was flashing my brights and beeping the horn so that people would see that I'm in duress. Well, again, needless to say, I just end up sliding right through the fucking stop sign. And kid you not, there wasn't one, but there was fucking two cops. One coming from each direction. I mean, what fucking luck is that? I told you, people, shit lines up. You can't have this. I mean, this night is just so ridiculous. This night is so ridiculous. So I get pulled over immediately. We're all scrambling. We have joints on us. We have acid on us. Somebody I know for a fact that my buddy in the front seat put a joint like down his pants, and somebody else put one down their pants. Well, they immediately get me out. Or they immediately asked for my license and registration and insurance, which I actually had all that. Okay. But I'd forgotten about running a stop sign in a county over about, 30-minute drive away. I ran a stop sign one day. It was a rolling stop. I didn't run it. I just never came to a full stop. We've all done that, right? Rolling stop. But I had a stop sign violation nonetheless. And I had a court date that I hadn't fucking gone to. So now these guys are telling me, you're going to be arrested. I'm like, great. Like, you're going to be arrested and you're going to be transferred over because we're arresting you for the neighboring county because you have a bench warrant out for your arrest. Well, that was just awesome news because I'm sitting here with my car. I'm the driver and I have obviously 4 passengers. And I'm like, well, what about my car? And they're like, well, can one of them drive it? Obviously I didn't want the cops to impound it because that was my option. Impound or have one of these guys show their license and drive away. Well, this is where it gets a little hairy. They now put me in the back of the car. I said that they had permission to get my buddy in the front car. Is like, he can drive it. Let him drive. By the way, I do stand and work all day. So if you see me pace, I usually have this board. I fucking love this thing from Uplift. Sponsorship. No, okay. But anyway, yeah, normally many times I'll stand on this thing and do this, but I've gotten over it lately. I haven't been on it in months now. But it would be fun, I think, to probably broadcast from that and just be kind of, doing this wobble thing. So anyway, they put me in the back of the car. They get permission. I tell them that my buddy can drive. I start seeing them, they get everybody out of the car, number one. And I guess, quite frankly, again, everything works out the way it did because when they got out of the car, somebody's joint fell out of their pants, and one of the cops found it. But they technically, and they even said it was like, nobody fessed up to it, and they could not technically pin it on them because they had not flashed the lights, as they said, to see if there was a joint there before they got everybody out of the car. So they find the joint. They end up. Luckily, they didn't find the acid. My buddy had it hidden well in his cigarette. I'm sure we all know how to hide acid in a cigarette pouch and do it well so that it's not obvious. Nonetheless, they take me off. I watch my car go off. They end up doing this interview. It was actually kind of scary because when they found the joint, now there was a 15-minute period of interview. Well, now it is like, I think that when I ran the stop sign, it was probably about 12:50. So, now it is, hey, thanks, man. Who is that? Thanks, Dion. Here we go. Dion gave me a shout out. Thank you, bro. I appreciate that. It is my 50th and I love it. So, oh shit, where was I? I'm such a stoner. Oh, so I'm sitting in the car and remember I dropped the acid. I'm starting to feel it. I mean, if you know acid, it usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour and 15 before it really kicks in, and then at around an hour and a half, you really start to peak, right? So they spend like 10-15 minutes interviewing them and putting them all through the ringers, which I just had to sit there and watch in horror, and I had no idea what was being said because I'm in a cop car now with my hands cuffed behind my back and the windows are up, right? So I can't hear or do shit. They finally take me, they go to the county line, they transfer me into the other county. So, side note, I have to just explain this. The other county, and this is again 1991. Now, I don't know if you know the day's music, but it was a well-known fact, and we in our county would pick on this county because they listened to AC/DC Back in Black as a county. And what I mean by that is we had so many jokes. Like if you go there, you're going to hear AC/DC, right? That's just the way it is. And I've been living there now for about a year and a half, so I've been hearing this consistently. So I'm on acid. They put me in the car. They transfer me into the new car. Put me in the car, and I know that I've got now about a 25-minute ride because the county sheriff's office, which is where it was the county sheriff's department that was arresting me, that had the bench warrant, and that's what I was getting transferred to. They were about 25 minutes in, or maybe it was 20. I guess 20 minutes in. It probably felt longer. Again, it was starting to kick in now, big time. They put me in the car. They start going. I kid you not. They fucking pop this. It's a tape decks back then. It's not even, cop cars don't have fucking CDs, and they didn't have MP3s. Pops the dead fucking tape in, and it's AC/DC Back in Black. And I was like, is this fucking real? I mean, I honestly started doubting reality for those moments. I'm like, I'd heard all these jokes. I'd never really met anybody from there, and the few people I did would make the same jokes. So I thought it was just a thing that they picked that album. But these fucking, clearly that county had a thing for Angus Young, man. Like, that's all I can tell you, because moment I got in, it was AC/DC. I mean, the area did like AC/DC, but for them to put that specific album on when that was the butt of every joke, that fucking blew me away while I'm sitting there tripping. And I'm now tripping hard. Halfway through this trip to the sheriff's department, it's really kicking in. It's happening. Let's see, reverse. I don't know. Verse ongoing. I don't know what that means. Maybe you can explain that better to me. Let's see what this one is. So I don't know what. Happy birthday. Have you found how to reverse aging? No. See, that's bad eyes. I can't reverse that shit. In fact, I should probably, but then I look like a total nerd. But that's why I started using that emoji. There you go. Right. I wear them like this. My mom picks on them because they're fucking filthy. Anyway, by the way, I know I have it running on the bottom there, but it would be nice if you folks think about subscribing, liking, sharing, all that kind of good stuff. It's in the easiest of terms, I'll say it this way. Oh, there we go. That is a fucking real cuckoo. Obviously, you can hear, but what I mean by that is when I went to go get a cuckoo, just side note, I know I'll come back to the trip. Don't worry, I've got it. Maybe I should write it down. Hey, just somebody throw in trip into the chat format, and I'll pop it up on the screen. But I have a side note about the clock, which I think is kind of cool, since you guys are going to be watching the channel, and I'm not going to stop my clock for can't stop time, right? In reference to your question, what? So yeah, back to the clock. When I went to go get a clock, and this was a couple years ago, I got it because I was having a great year in sales, and it was Christmas time. So I started looking into them, and just through looking into getting one, I found out that they originated from the Blackwood Forest in Germany, and that was the only real, true, authentic cuckoos that actually has papers of authentication, all this stuff. But it's really badass when you learn about it. So I ended up getting an actual authentic one. I think I spent it wasn't that much. I mean, if y'all think that what I'm about to tell you is a lot in this day and age, then my goodness, you should have seen what I spent back in 92 through 94 when I was dealing drugs. As a drug lord, that was the time. $350. I think 360, technically $370, maybe $380 after shipping and handling and all that good shit. So anyway, back to the trip. Nobody put it in there. That's okay. There we go. Pure Eagles. I get it. Um, I probably am not an Eagles fan, brother. Sorry. I grew up in the Southeast, so my team back then, and when I actually was really into sports, was the Atlanta Falcons and the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm trying to remember none of the schools because I went to 8 schools out of 11 years. And I don't think any of them were ever Eagles. So back to the trip and tripping. So I'm tripping really hard. I'm now, we're more than halfway there. We're listening to Back in Black. And then I'm still fighting. Is this really happening? Obviously. I stopped fighting at the moment that we actually get to the county police department, which is where I went because it wasn't even, it was just, this is 1991 and you're talking about a tiny little town. So like they had a couple of holding cells there. It was not the jail, but it was where you would go through the intake process. And the first time you ever, go through intake process as an adult, there's my dogs, Neo and Trinity. Yes, they are named after the famous duo because they are brother and sister. So I figured it would be nice to have an incestual thing going on. No, I'm just teasing. They do love one another, but it's not sick like that. So shut up. Back to what I was saying. It got real, very real when I started to go through the intake process. In fact, I will say for a few moments, just really quick, and you'll understand why, but for a few moments, it almost felt like it was going to like sober me up, but that just doesn't happen on LSD. Not to mention the fact that I now walk in, they do the fingerprints, they take the handcuffs off and they do the fingerprints. And then they walk me into the sheriff, the main sheriff there. And that's who's there. This is now 1:30, 1:45 in the morning, right? And it's the main sheriff, which I just thought was right out of the gate. It started feeling Andy Griffith. I was like, what the fuck? What was on the TV was not Andy Griffith, but I'll get to that here in a minute. But again, it was all mind boggling. I almost wanted to go with the quote there from Blades of Glory, mind boggling, crazy. It bottles up. So they sit me down and immediately I do look up and I kid you not, they had a corner TV, right? And up there on the corner TV was HBO's Real Six, like number 5. Look it up at the time because I think it was like the newest one. It was like Real Sex number 5 or 6. I fucking couldn't believe it. The sheriff is sitting here watching Real Sex. And I don't know if any of y'all remember this show, and you can look it up, do some Googling on this, but it was pretty hardcore, especially for HBO. Like, I mean, they had hardcore episodes about sex, from different sexualities to the porn industry to like sex toys and sex make. I mean, it was anything you could think about. It was sex, right? It was pretty hardcore, man. And I was, what the fuck is going on? Is this actually happening? It kept, just hitting me in the ass. But then it went back to Andy Griffith because around the corner, this old fucking dude, like the way, if y'all remember Andy Griffith, Barney Miller was clearly much older than him, like by 10, maybe 15 years, right? He was all wrinkled and shit. Bent over, little Barney. The only difference between this dude and Barney is this dude was black, which actually made me feel like I knew I was in the South. Because this dude walks in like Barney fucking Fife with a cup of coffee. That's what it was. His fucking purpose was to give the sheriff fucking cup of coffee. Again, we are now talking, by the time that he brought that coffee in, it's like 2:00, man. I'm peaking. I don't know how they didn't know. I don't know how I kept it together where they didn't go, son, are you high on some fucking drugs? Because I kept expecting that, man. I'm telling you, I kept expecting it the whole fucking time. And I held my shit together. I to the grace of God, I held my shit together. In fact, on that nud, what do we got here? Oh, there, yeah. So go Falcons, Eagle music. Oh yeah, I get it, man. Is it too loud? Is the music too loud? Just out of curiosity, anybody give me a yes or no there, so I know I have it. I'm going to learn in the future streams because the music in the beginning of the intro and the music in the outro when I leave, that is my own. I actually made some music tracks. I want to use those. I also downloaded some other royalty-free stuff that is fucking 5 times better than than the shit that, I mean, no offense to StreamYard, I really appreciate their software. It's badass and they don't charge that much, but you can't upload your own, you can't hear it. Okay, so I'm not going to turn it up then. We'll just keep talking. Doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and, so for those of you who don't know me and haven't watched my channel, this is Senior Rick, because he is Steamroller Rick. I think you can click. What's really cool is so you can see he's actually got, can you see? Let's see. There we go. Can you see it? Like, it's just like Pickle Rick. It's his, the face of Rick on this. Now, funny enough, they actually put the pickle down here too. One of my favorite pieces. I got this for $80 before I left the Southeast. One of my last really great things from there. Man, honey, you really packed that shit tight. All right, so back to Andy Griffith world. I'm now tripping my nuts off. I'm at any moment I know they're going to discover what's going on, but shit just gets weirder. Okay, it's now, I remember it's 2:30 and he's like, okay, we're done. we've set a bond for you. We don't feel like you're a risk. I believe you. Because I told the guy, I was like, honestly, Sheriff, I just forgot. I put the fucking ticket in my glove box. I'd never gotten a ticket. It was my first ticket. I even told my father that. I was like, I go to court, and then I just fucking forgot. I luckily, it was not this day and age, or else I probably would have been so transparently honest. Sorry, officer, I was fucking stoned when it happened, which I was. I was stoned when it happened, so I put it in the line, or the glove box there, and didn't think about it again. I don't think I told my dad for real. But anyway, he tells me we're done. They've set a bond, and he explains to me that I can get a bondsman. Right? So I'm like, that's cool. How does that work? And he's like, well, there's only one awake. I was like, this is about to get really good then, isn't it? So he's like, well, he's on his way over. We've already called him for you. He's on his way over. He'll probably be here in about 10 minutes. So I'm thinking this is a good thing. I'm going to end up, being fine. I'll get a bond and get out of this situation. Soon enough, I'll be able to be with my car while I'm peaking, because I mean, let's face it, I started peaking right about 1:30. I knew I had a good 6 hours left in this thing. So I was ready to get out of here, right, and move on with the trip. So needless to say, that didn't happen, or I wouldn't be telling the story. Bondsman gets there. He's got a cowboy hat on when he gets there, and he's got boots on. And I kid you not, he looks like the Raging Cajun, if anybody knows who I'm talking about. That guy wasn't famous in 91, but when I have the memory of what's going on, all I picture is the fucking Raging Cajun sitting there too, because he also had a real scratchy voice. Because what was going on is this guy had cancer. He'd been going through chemotherapy and radiation, and this is 91 terms, so this shit was harsh, right? He'd lost all his hair, and now he's talking this real scratchy voice, and he starts to explain to me in this scratchy fucking voice that because of the chemo, because of that, he would, if it wasn't for the chemo, I should say, and everything that he's going through and how broken down he is, he would always give somebody a ride back to their car, particularly considering I was now 30 minutes from my car. Okay, minimum. So I'm like, okay, so I guess that means what you're essentially telling me is if you normally would do it, then that's not going to happen tonight. Again, I was expecting him to be like, dude, are you on drugs? That's it. That's what's fuck. Okay, dude, I get it. I'm not getting a ride. Okay, great. So what happens next? Well, you're free to go. It's now 2:45 in the morning. I'm a half hour from my car, and essentially, in a triangle, if you will, I'm a half hour from my home. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? So they said there was a payphone out there. Feel free to use the phone. Well, this is at 91, and even though I was dealing drugs, I had not quite graduated to like even pager, which is the best that you would have as a 91 drug dealer. And so I hadn't graduated to a pager, much less any kind of a mobile phone. So I didn't have numbers like, memorized of friends, like the way. And what's funny is when you're stoned, it's one thing. But when you're tripping on acid and you try to remember somebody's number, I swear to God, the only fucking number I could remember was my fucking home number. That's it. That's all. It's the only one that came to me. And I'm like, fuck, all right, bite the bullet. So I called Dad. All right. So my father, he answers the phone. Obviously, he was asleep. I know he wasn't expecting the call by any stretch of his, his imagination. He answers the call and he's like, "Hello," because it's I'm sure. Again, this was 91. We didn't have caller ID. It's just a phone call in the middle of the night. He answers the phone. I mean, it's, "Hey, Dad." So right out of the gate, he knows it's me. Right? Like, I've been arrested. I'm in such and such county sheriff's office. Excuse me. Could you come pick me up? Could you come give me a ride? So he quickly, what did you get arrested for? And I told him, I was like, I didn't go to court on a traffic violation on a run the stop sign court date. He's like, "Yo, okay." Silence. That's what I got for about what felt like an eternity, considering the condition I was in, but what probably equated to about maybe 15, 20 seconds of real time. But it really did seem like forever, because right when I was about to say, "Are you there?" he's like, "You got cigarettes?" I was like, "Yeah, funny enough, I got one minus a full pack." They got money? And I was like, I got some. So I got a place to stay? And I was like, well, they said that I could sleep here if I want to, if I needed to. He's like, well, if you're still there at noon tomorrow, give me a call. Click. So obviously I was not going to get a ride from my father. And I was now, I was balls deep in the middle of this trip. It was really digging in. And I was starting to even get my eyes had already been dilated. The walls were already breathing and all that, but I was starting to get like really, really heavy trails and heavy visuals of when people say visuals, by the way, I've actually done drugs. Rarely do you actually see I don't know, like the fucking nutcracker show up in your fucking place. I will say this, there was a trip where I saw some serious visuals, and I'll go into that on another time. That was actually my very first LSD trip. But I'll just say this. I was looking at a stain on the carpet on my first trip, and it turned into multiple perfect pictures of just like highly executed artwork, until it turned into a clown that literally looked like, it freaked me out, because the guy that was sitting on the couch that was with me was like, "You okay, dude?" Because I totally freaked out, but I'd already felt bad because I spilled wine on his carpet. Anyway, like I said, that's a whole nother story. I'll tell you that story. That's a long night. There's so much more. That's like just a smidgen of my first trip. Those are 8-hour stories, man. So I don't have a place to, I don't have a ride. I can't remember anybody's fucking number. I am really, really high now on, or tripping really hard on the LSD. And there's no way that I'm going to fucking spend my trip sitting in a jail cell. Even though the door would be open. Oh, I forgot to tell you the Mayberry effect that was happening before the bondsman and before I got bonded even. I told you about the old black dude who was, hysterical. And he ended up coming in there a couple times, but it was always just to serve the sheriff. But this drunk, I totally forgot. Just like on the show, a drunk walks in. They look at him. They say his name. They're like, "Sale 2. And this dude, all he had on was a fucking pair of jeans. He was barefoot, and you could tell that he was drunk as a skunk. He goes in there, lays down, and passes out. Tell me that I'm not in Mayberry. What the fuck, dude? And I wasn't about to spend the night in the jail cell beside the fucking town drunk. It didn't seem kosher. I always thought that shit on Mayberry was like made up. I now understand somebody wrote that because that's how their fucking town was. It's crazy. So anyway, I'm not spending the night there, and I'm again, if anybody's never done acid, tripping gives you a false sense of energy. I shouldn't say a false sense. It gives you energy. you'll go until the trip runs out and then you'll crash. Again, that's a story for another day because I've had some trips that lasted days. No sleep. We'll get into all that. Back to this one. So it is now 3, and when I made the decision that I'm going to walk back. So I start walking. I really don't know where I'm going, and these guys kind of told me, so I started going in that direction, but it didn't make a lot of sense. And you got to remember now, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're talking about backwoods Tennessee. I do not have a cell phone, so I don't have any kind of flashlight. I wasn't prepared with a flashlight. All I had on, and this is the point where I should describe how I was dressed back then. So I had on a neon bright pink tank top. I had on these purple baggy pants, right? My hair was long enough to be all in my face, so I didn't need glasses, but I kept a pair of glasses, that I would do like this, and then I would pull them up and pull all the hair. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry about that. I would pull all the hair out of my face, and it would kind of fall around my ears, but that would keep the hair out of my face. I didn't. It wasn't long enough to put in a ponytail, so that was the way I did it. And then I had if you can believe this, it was like a neon overshirt that was short sleeve, but it was a neon overshirt button down that I left unbuttoned. So I looked not from the area. In fact, everybody always thought that I had moved there from California, because it was probably, quite frankly, I was probably wearing more California clothes, which was very uncommon to do in these small towns in the South, by the way. There was nobody else dressed like me, and I ended up getting my ass kicked a few times for it. Again, more stories. I think I said it on the show the other day. Storyteller, philosopher, preacher. That's what I'm doing. That's why I'm here. So back to, that is my outfit. I also had flip-flops, not even sandals, but just straight up flip-flops. And I decided I'm going to walk back. And we're talking about what equates to about, I told you it's about a 30-minute drive. Most of that is highway. So what we're talking about is approximately 22 miles away. Give or take, I might be off by that. I mean, it was a long time ago. So I get about 5 or 6 blocks away from the sheriff's department, and I really don't know where the fuck I am, but you'll never believe this because I didn't. I mean, I'm on acid, and sure enough, 3-4 blocks away was already like 10 minutes. So it's past 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's these 2 old fucking dudes outside, not a bar, but like a fucking gas station, convenience store that is clearly closed, and they're sitting out there drinking beers, playing chess. Just blew me the hell away, man. I was honestly beside myself. I was like, is this seriously happening? But it was perfect because I needed directions. I was like, hey guys, how do I get here? I need to get back to this town. I need to get back to this highway heading in this direction. So they told me how to get there, and I started my journey, and I'm walking, and I get to the highway. Nobody's obviously, there's nobody around, man. This is a small town. Like, there's nobody traveling on these inner roads. I think one car the whole time I was in town. Before I got onto the highway, I should make sure to point out, one car passed me while I was in town. So there was no getting a ride from a stranger. Plus, remember, I told you how I look, man. I look like I came 1991. I look like I came from California. I probably looked like I was drugged out to most people. Again, how those cops and bondsmen, and none of them. I still feel to this day I probably left, and the bondsman was like, that dude was tripping his nuts off. Or I should say, that dude was tripping his nuts off. So he didn't have, by the way, I'm doing that voice. He didn't have it wasn't one of those tracheotomies. The chemo was killing his voice box. I imagine that, or maybe the cancer was in his throat. I bet that was it. I was high on drugs, people. So they give me the directions. One car maybe passes me while I'm in the inner streets. I get on the highway. I finally get on the highway. Well, on the highway, I now know that I've got a good 20-mile hike, and I'm like, I'm sure somebody will give me a ride, right? And by the way, if you have ever walked a highway, and this is not an interstate, which to me would have been even better because you just have more open land between trees, right? I mean, these highways and interstates, they just cut through forests, right? Man, it's one thing to walk along those roads by yourself. It's another thing to walk along those roads by yourself at night, in the dead of night, in the early AM morning when nobody else is out. It is yet another thing to do that while you are 100% tripping on 2 hits of fucking white blotter. That's all I can tell you, man. I was freaking the fuck out, and there's nobody, I had been through trips, so I had babysitters in the past when I had done early trips and things like that. Didn't have one on that first trip. I should say I did, but then they bailed because they wanted to go get laid. Again, another story. But I had nobody with me. I had nobody to pull me back down and be like, hey, man, it's okay. You're just tripping. I had to keep telling myself, you are just tripping. That's not glowing eyes looking at you in the forest, from the forest while you're walking by. But I really thought I was going to get picked up. 20 miles, thought for sure I was going to get picked up. And I'm not like speed walking. I'm walking just, strolling because I know I got a long walk. So I'm not trying to like win a fucking marathon or anything. Even though I was essentially walking to equated to what I would say it was about the distance of a typical marathon. So I just keep walking and cars passing, and I'm giving them the thumb, I'm like, hey, please pick me up. But remember, I've got these sunglasses on at night, right on the back of my head with my hair back, and then this glowing top outfit, fluorescent pink with fluorescent green, and then, bright purple baggy pants and flip-flops. Nobody fucking picked me up, man. And I'm telling you, by the 100th, because I was counting, I know at least 100 cars passed me that morning. I was fucking livid because fuck you. Oh man, they would pass and I'm just screaming, flipping them off. Like, who do you, it went on and on. And finally at around 6:35, maybe 6, no, I guess it was like 6:50, maybe even 6:55, because we weren't that far. I've been walking all morning. It was now, and I'm trying to remember the right time because the guy dropped me off at 7:15. So you can do the math. And once you get to where my car was, we had to go to essentially go to a payphone, and I had to call and find out where my car was once we got into town. So that's why I say it was about 15 minutes later. And then the car wasn't there, but we'll get to that. So I finally get a ride from a guy in this fucking beat up old truck, man. This thing is a piece of shit. I think it was a Toyota, and it's one of these old, or it might have been a Isuzu or something. It's like one of those old pup trucks, just, 2-wheel drive, but it was beat to shit. Not that I was judging or upset. I was quite happy to get the ride. But I got the ride, and I'm sitting there kind of telling him my story. I mean, how can I not, right? Guy's giving me a ride. He's like, what the fuck are you doing out on the road in this time of day? I'm like, I've been walking that road for like 3 hours, man. It'd been longer than 3 hours by that time. So the guy starts talking, and my father worked for a company there, and he was white collar, and this guy's sitting there talking to me, and I'd already told him my name for whatever reason. I guess I just felt compelled to, because the guy gave me a ride, and I wanted to know that I was being, honest, and I wasn't going to hurt him or anything like that. And I was extremely grateful. But then the guy tells me that he works for the same company, and I hadn't said anything about my dad yet, but I was like, oh shit, man! I told him my name, and there's not many of us in that town, so I've always wondered if my father knows some of the story, but I've never told him the whole story. So I get the ride. We call. Somebody tells me my car's at one place. I get dropped off there. The guy's like, I got to go. My car's not there. I end up having to walk from there, and I did I think it was about a 45-minute walk from there where my car finally ended up being, and I got there at 9 o'clock. And I kid you not, I walked in, and as I walked in, I remember thinking, nothing left. I literally felt no high whatsoever. My entire trip started from the arrest and ended before I got back to my car, which it was insane. It really blew me away. So I've been going now for a little bit. I think it's going on an hour. I think I told myself I would go at least an hour, but I got a few more things I wanted to cover. Strange things. I usually talk about some strange things about me or what I find strange. I find this one pretty strange. I don't think most people go through this, but as I was growing up, I ended up going to multiple schools. I told you that. Well, one of the little tiny stints and the only place that I went to school for 3 years. Oh shit, I did it again. That's funny. The only place that I ever went to school for 3 years in a row was a private school, right? And at that private school, there was only one other person in my neighborhood because the school was like a 25-minute drive across town. It was on the other side of town from where we lived. So my father hooked up getting a ride with a couple down the street that had their daughter in the school. And we would ride to school together, and we ended up going out and, now this is 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, okay, to point out. And in the 3rd and 4th grade, probably like 3 times off, and you remember what going together meant back then. At best, you kissed, maybe French kissed. I just want to be clear on that. We went together like multiple times, right? We ended up hooking up. I mean, we rode to school together and we became close friends, and we lived in the same neighborhood. We were the only people that went to that school. It was not hard to figure out. And she got picked on by a lot of people, and then she started getting cute in the 3rd grade, and I was still friends with her, so I got the benefit of that. Well, skip forward to me being in the 6th grade, okay? And we didn't talk anymore because I was now in public school, and I had gone to one school in 5th grade, and then I was now in a different school in 6th grade. I told you there was moving around my whole life. Even before, that's why I say I was nomadic by nature, but then I used to run from my problems. Another story. But back to the 6th grade, my father starts dating somebody, and he won't tell me who it is. And he just refers to her as old Margaret, right? Well, finally, the day comes that I get to meet old Margaret, and I knock on. My dad walks me up to the apartment. I knock on the door, and no shit, girl that I got, she answers. It's their mother. She had left the dude apparently, which I was a kid, I didn't know, and she and I had lost touch, even though we lived in the same neighborhood. She had continued to go on to that school, and we weren't talking and going together anymore, or anything like that. But my father started dating the mother the moment that she got a separation from the father, the husband. And he had been dating her for like 2 months. And it was really awkward to have someone open the door who you used to have a crush on of any kind and even kissed, and then they open the door and your dad's dating him. She ended up becoming my stepsister. And my dad was married to that woman for 26 years until she passed. So you tell me, I find that pretty strange. It always weirded me out a little bit. And there's so many stories there. The other thing I'll say, I just thought it was, some people, at least everybody I tell, they think it's strange because I have these permanent burn marks on my feet because I wear sandals all the time. So I have these like white stripes where the sandals, wrap around. It's almost always Teva these days. They're just the most comfortable and have what I have found to be the most arch support. So I do enjoy. With that, I hope everybody, thinks about subscribing and following me. I know on Twitch, just for those who are watching from Twitch, I'm not asking you to subscribe. I don't have subscription or anything there yet. Please just follow me. I'll be doing live broadcasts pretty much 3 times a week. On YouTube, please subscribe. And on Twitter, please follow me as well. Everything happens for a reason. I think I've given plenty of examples to that. And if you don't watch my show and you don't know my my little taglines, if you will, one of them is that most people just don't realize how normal strange is. So you can see running along the bottom of the screen, I am trying to get the hashtag be more strange, hashtag strange is good, those 2 hashtags going. I'm also trying to get the hashtag Spirit of 420 obviously going. as well as So 420, which is simply my initials, but I think it rocks. That said, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, and everybody else thinks that everybody's stinks. Mine smell like fresh brewed coffee that is fucking cold as shit now. I promise you it's gotten cold, and there's barely a sip in there left for me to do it. And I'll hit what is dubbed Little Sacks. That's White Widow, Little Sacks, Purple Passion, and y'all already saw Senor Rick. So again, my opinions, they stink like coffee and medical grade weed. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. I hope you'll tune in again another time. Have a great Thursday. I'm going to have a wonderful birthday. Probably going to end up watching a movie with my boys later. Until then, until the next episode, until whatever, have a great time.